Friday is here, which means we have Saturday, which is going to be filled with NHL action. We're coming off a Thursday where there was so many interesting and great storylines that came up. We were just talking about the Detroit Red Wings. Steven always of NorthStar Bets joining me, of course. Stevie, actually, let's just get right into it. Last night, we were talking off air before we recorded about how cool it will be to see the Detroit Red Wings back in the playoffs and how the playoffs are just a different vibe when original six squads are in there. And now, of course, we're going to have potentially, well, we are going to have four, potentially maybe five if Calgary can get on a hot run. But how excited are you for the playoffs and how excited are you for these matchups that everybody's been talking about? We have, of course, the Oilers versus potentially the Golden Knights or the Kings, the Canucks playing the Golden Knights, the Leafs playing either Boston or Florida, the Jets playing whomever survives the Central Division. Just how exciting and how good of a spot is the NHL in right now heading into the playoffs?
It's great because let's face it, when these original six franchises, these Canadian teams get into the playoffs, the series matter more. And small market teams, you'll agree with me because I can get almost 100% guarantee it feels way better beating a team like the Boston Bruins than it does beating the Seattle Kraken. No offense to Seattle Kraken, but they haven't really built up a lot of rivalries or a lot of animosity with different teams in the league. The Boston Bruins, hey, they've been the hunted for 12, 13 years right now. So when you knock off a team like that, it feels really good. So to me, when you have those teams, the original six, the Canadian squads who have those strong fan bases and are vocal about their love for their team, it feels better when you silence them.
I agree. Look, I'm super excited for the playoffs right now. Just watching the games over the last couple weeks. I watched the Detroit Islanders game, and just to see how fired up a guy like Patrick Kane is in Detroit, I was very reminiscent of when he was in Chicago. This team right now, I don't know what it is about Detroit. Maybe it's just the jerseys or the just to see Detroit once again being good and competing for a playoff spot is something very impressive. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won 5 straight games, and this is kind of a perfect segue into our next topic, the Art Ross race. We have very dominantly focused on McKinnon and Matthews, but currently on North Star Bets, the favorite for the Art Ross Trophy is Nikita Kucherov at minus 165, followed by Nathan McKinnon and Connor McDavid at plus 350. Excuse me. McDavid had 3 assists last night as the Oilers destroyed the Sabres 8-3. And then Kucherov had 4 assists himself. So, Stevie, at this particular juncture, if you were to place pick a horse in the race, who would your horse be in this race? McKinnon, McDavid, or the favorite right now, Nikita Kucherov?
Well, I think for Art Ross, it's got to be Kucherov. I think he's going to finish with the most points, which then you have to start asking yourself, why isn't he going to win the Hart Trophy? Like, really, it's the player most valuable to his team. And we all know that if the Avalanche lost McKinnon, they would not be sniffing a postseason spot or at least sniffing a divisional title. But you take McKinnon away, that defense is still really good. Rantanen's not a bad player. They don't have a lot of center depth. That's a problem. But I would say that team overall is in a much better spot than the Tampa Bay Lightning are. I mean, the Lightning, if they lose Kucherov, he has such a big gap over the next closest player on his team in points. And I think that really tells you how important he is. Why isn't he getting more love in the Hart Trophy race if he has more points than McKinnon? Right now, McKinnon minus 200 to win the Hart Trophy. Kucherov plus 350.
Right.
Does make you wonder. I do think McKinnon, it's kind of been a long time coming with him, and I think the award voters will recognize that. But I'm just saying, pound for pound, you look at it straight up this season, I think Kucherov's got a pretty good case too for the Hart. Not only the Art Ross, but the Hart as well.
Well, you look at Kucherov, right? I'm looking at this since 2017, 2018, in those subsequent, 6 seasons, he's scored over 100 points 4 times, right? Then, of course, he had a shortened season in 1920 where he's had 85 points in 68 games. In the lockout, was it 2022 in 47 games, he has 69 points. This guy produces points like a madman, and I think for whatever reason, maybe it's because he plays in Tampa and all that stuff, and he just doesn't get the limelight as the Canadian superstars in McDavid and McKinnon. But this is a guy who all he does is produce points. He doesn't perform in the All-Star game in the skills competition, but he does perform on the ice when it matters the most. I think that I can't knock McDavid, man. I cannot discredit him yet. He's 10 points back. Yes, I get it. But dude, 3 assists again. He's gonna get over 100 assists this season. I just think that if anybody can do it, it's Connor McDavid. I think he can go on one final push in the last 12 to 13 games of the season and hit and catch Kucherov. I just think it can happen. Call me crazy for still believing in Connor McDavid, but I will not discredit him whatsoever to win the Art Ross Trophy at plus 350. And that's some good value too.
Yeah, I'm not gonna call you crazy either. It's Connor McDavid. We've seen this guy do the extraordinary. So I'm not gonna call you crazy, but if you're gonna give me 1-versus-1 straight up,
You do get a
I'll
10-point
take
head start. You do get a 10-point head start from today.
Yes, exactly. That does help. So yeah, I will take Cooch, but it's close. And McDavid's awesome too. You can't go wrong either way.
Well, McDavid, Draisaitl, and company head to Toronto on Saturday night to face off against the Toronto Maple Leafs, who just won big of their own in Washington. Austin Matthews kind of back on track after you kind of bashed him on Wednesday a little bit. They come in at home on Saturday against the Edmonton Oilers. How do you see that matchup shaking out?
Well, I think my criticism still holds on Austin Matthews. He's just not a big game player. You're telling me Wednesday in March against the Washington Capitals is a big game? I'm going to have to say no. This is a pretty big game. Edmonton, Toronto. Let's see what he does on Saturday night. I'm picking Edmonton to win this game. They've overall looked like the better team coming into this one. Very few teams have been as good as Edmonton since that horrid start to the year. So I'm going to go with the Oilers to beat the Maple Leafs, and I feel pretty good about it. I think they were talking about it last night after the game. Zach Hyman mentioned how he hasn't won there since he joined the Oilers. So I think they got maybe a little extra fire under their belly. And hey, your Canucks, they won last night, but there's a few games in hand, and the Oilers are 8 points back. So it's not dead yet, but I will say it looks good for your Canucks, but it's not dead yet.
I think yesterday when I checked, the Canucks had an 85% chance of winning the Pacific. Look, I think that's locked up, even though as long as the Canucks keep on taking care of business, they will be fine. I do agree with you. This is a big game for Austin Matthews. Saturday night, hockey night in Canada, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl come to town. Guys that are, been compared to Austin Matthews, excuse me, whether rightfully or wrongfully. I want to see him show up. I mentioned this the other day. He needs to have another very good performance because, as you mentioned the other day, Boston, 2 games against Boston, no show. Vegas, no show. Carolina, no show of the last little while. This is a big game where Austin Matthews has to show up. Looking at it, the Oilers have been, I don't even know. Did you see that game last night? Just the passing display they had on. They looked like they are firing on all cylinders, Stevie. And when I look at the Oilers, it's hard not to bet against them to win the Stanley Cup this year, man. I just think, though, everything they've gone through this year, the adversity, all of that stuff, this team looks primed and ready. They've gone through, the Colorados. They've had heartbreak through their heartbreak from Vegas. It looks like they've been battle tested in the playoffs. They've gone through the horrible start. They fired the coach. They're playing their best hockey. I think they win the Stanley Cup, and I don't think anybody can stop them.
I don't think that's a crazy call. Look, in the West, I think it's coming down to Edmonton. I think it's coming down to Dallas. I'll say those two teams once again. And Dallas is a team I like to win the Central still, plus 250. They've got the longest odds of the 3 teams fighting there because they've played, I think, one more game than those two. But look, you have Winnipeg losing a very winnable game last night to the New Jersey Devils. Dallas just has been, I think, the steadiest team from that bunch from start to where we are right now. So I'll pick Dallas. And I like Dallas to get to the Western Conference Final. And I think Edmonton is the other team that gets there. I think that is what your Western Conference Final looks like. And I'm thinking one of those 2 teams wins the Cup this year. I think it's either going to be the Dallas Stars or the Edmonton Oilers. I haven't decided yet. Decision still bearing. But I've got those 2 teams, one of those 2 teams representing the West and then winning the Stanley Cup.
Okay. Well, so this is where I take on the Central. Now, let me run through the Central odds. As you kind of mentioned, the Stars are, the third at
Yeah,
plus
plus 250 right
250.
now for
The Jets are plus
Dallas. It's
225.
not a bad price.
Not a not a bad price at all. And the Avs are the favorite at plus 105. I'm looking at that Central Division, right? And I look at that first round. That's going to be a war, right? If I'm any team in the Central, I'm dying to get that. That is the number one key. If I can face the Nashville Predators, who again are no slouches themselves,
No.
but that's a lot easier of a out than playing either the Colorado Avalanche or the Dallas Stars or the Winnipeg Jets. I think Colorado gets it done. I think the way they're playing right now, they won 7 straight games right now. I think Colorado gets the division, and then Dallas gets the second spot, and Winnipeg falls to the third. The Jets have just been kind of inconsistent in the last 10 games. They've won, they've had really good games, but then they've lost a few stinkers. I just look at the Jets as a very good story. I think they have the goaltending, they have the upfront talent, but that defense core too is a bit of a weak point. They play very well together, but I just don't know if they have the horses to be successful come playoff time. Whereas I think the Abs, they got, of course, Kale McCarr, they can throw it there, Devon Taves out there, and then of course we know just how deep the Dallas Stars are. That to me, right there, that Central Division is going to be a war. And like you said, a team like Edmonton, who could potentially, I think, dispatch of Vegas or LA fairly quickly. And then if they play Vancouver in the second round, that's going to be tough, but that's one less series where they're going to be less beat up, I believe. So that I think benefits a team from the Pacific because that Central Division, just getting out of that side of the bracket, is going to be an absolute war.
Yeah, 100%, especially if it's Nashville, who is that wild card team that crosses over with the Central. I mean, they do play in the Central, but
Yeah.
they could play either Vancouver or whoever wins the Central. And I do think that is another tough out.
Mhm.
People, again, they like to mention Vegas. I'm not sold on this Golden Knights team. I'm just not there. I'm not ready, even with a full roster, ready to say that they're going back to the Cup final. I think you got to look at the way Nashville's playing and give them a lot of respect. They played Florida last night and beat them 3-0. They've won 14 of their last 16 games. They picked up a point in all of those games. I was doing the research because yesterday they were puck line underdogs. So
Mhm.
they've covered obviously as a puck line underdog in all of those 16 games during this hot streak. And they've covered as a puck line favorite now in 14 of 16 games during this streak. They've been absolutely on fire. Uh, you can't you can't knock this Nashville team. They've been excellent. So give me the Preds as a team that, again, can make noise. Them and then Tampa Bay are the two teams that, if you're looking for wild cards that can go on a run, I
Mhm.
think they could at least win one series and potentially more.
Yeah, look, that was perfect segue to what I was asking. The Predators are what 14 wins or something since they were
14
banned
0
from
and
going
2.
14-0-2
Yeah.
from since they were banned from going to see U2 at the Sphere. So yeah, the Lightning are plus 3,000, Nashville Predators plus 3,500, the Red Wings are plus 6,000. Out of those teams, I do agree with you. I think Tampa Bay, the way they've been playing and the acquisition of Matt Dumba and how well he's fit in. I think again, I like Nashville. I like a lot what they've done. I like the way they play, but I think kind of like the Jets, they're a better story than team this year. I think in a 7 game series where teams can really hone in and exploit everybody's weaknesses, I believe the Nashville can get exploited. Now, UC Soros can get hot and win you a couple games and steal you a couple games, but I'd rather take my chances with the Predators over a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning, who, let's face it, have been kind of an afterthought ever since last year's playoffs, where they haven't really been talked about much. And here they are once again playing their best hockey at the right time of the year. And I would not want to face them if I'm the Florida Panthers, the Boston Bruins, if I'm the New York Rangers or the Carolina Hurricanes. That's the one team I do not want to face because they know how to win when it matters the most and they know how to close teams out. And we know come playoff time, closing teams out is the most important factor. I mean, look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. They don't have that ability, and Tampa does. So,
Yeah, you look at the last even 2 weeks. Tampa Bay, they've got wins over the Rangers and they got win over the Florida Panthers. Like
right.
those could be their first round opponents. And that's a big confidence booster for their psyche. And they're a team that doesn't need a confidence booster. You think the team that's won 2 of the last 4 Stanley Cups
Right.
needs to feel good? No. But the fact that they are feeling good right now and they're gelling is scary for the rest of the league. And there's, I think, extra motivation this year because you have Steven Stamkos, who may or may not be returning to the Lightning. This could be their final go, really, when you look at their window. And this is a this is a Lightning team that, when motivated, is a tough out. So this reminds me a lot of when they remind me a lot specifically of when Boston went to the Cup back in 2019, where you could sense that the window, especially for a guy like Chara, their captain, was closing.
Yeah.
A team that had had a lot of success before that, and a lot of people thought that maybe they were out of their prime. Of course, that was the year Tampa Bay destroyed the regular season and then got swept by Columbus in the first round. So Boston that year, again, a bit of an afterthought. Tampa Bay, bit of an afterthought this year. But they're a team. Look out! I get a lot of 2019 Bruins vibes from this Tampa Bay team. And Nashville, hey, maybe they're the St. Louis on the other side of the standings. You know, that underdog that's getting hot. I don't think so either. Like I said, I got Edmonton and I've got Dallas in the Western Conference Final. But watch out for those Tampa Bay Lightning. They can win a Stanley Cup, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least.
If any team out there has can prove to win a Stanley Cup, it's them. They've done it multiple times. Stevie, thanks so much again. I will be reconvening next week to break down this wild weekend of NHL action and gear up more towards the playoffs. So take care. Have a good weekend, my friend.
Yeah, you too, Justin. Can't wait to break it all down next week.